So another experiment today. We're in X-Plane 11. We're in the default Cessna 172 using an air manager panel here. Just doing this as a bit of an experiment. We're in France. We're in Albertville, no doubt. And we're going to fly to Courchevel, which is a very well known airport. Where are we? Are we on the strip? Or is this a taxiway? This may be a taxiway. I have a history with this airport. One of my very early FSX videos was made at this airport. You can go and look for that if you want. It's not actually worth looking at, to be honest. But I'm trying this because Orbix, as part of their Fly July promotion, gave away the X-Plane version of Courchevel for free. So that's pretty good. So that's up in the mountains, 6,500 feet, which is not far short of a mile higher than we are here. So we're going to fly up there and just land very sloppily, not particularly well planned or thought out. It's a nice day. Other than that, we're using default X-Plane scenery, which is why these mountains all look a little bit rough and ready. The textures are pretty okay. It's the mesh, the default mesh in X-Plane isn't great. Whoops. Okay, so what are we going to do? We're going to take off. We're going to do a bit of a 180. We want to be flying north east initially, then we turn into the valley, then we're going to follow the river up the valley and ascend as we go. I don't really need flaps, but we'll go with 10 flaps. 10. Let's get up in the air before I start talking anymore. We don't have any appreciable wind here, having to use quite a lot of rudder just to keep that straight. We're up. Because all my controls are in the wrong position for a Cessna 172. This is my twin otter cockpit. That's why I'm reaching up to get the flaps in. So we'll do that 180 first. X-Plane, default scenery, the roads look rubbish as you'd expect. There's the river. I think that's the river we're going to follow all the way up to Courchevel. I've got it dialed in on the GPS. There's a direct 2. Direct 2 is no good to us, obviously, because we're not flying a Harrier jump jet today. Alright, so flaps are in. We're dialed for we're going about 85 on the ascent. So we want to be heading for pretty much that valley there. And then we're going to follow that up. So what are we doing? This is just an experiment. You know, I've gone back to X-Plane to check it out. I'm looking for a new aircraft to fly. Of course, I'm looking for a new sim to settle on as well over the next month. We're less than a month away now from the official release of Microsoft Flight Simulator, or FS 2020. So looking forward to checking that out. very likely my hardware is not going to run that acceptably. You know, my hardware, as I've pointed out in my previous video, barely runs prepared or X-Plane acceptably. This is X-Plane 11 with the default aircraft, don't forget, and I still get a warning a lot of the time saying that I'm not able to run in real time, and I have fairly modest settings in my X-Plane. Again, this is down to this 3-screen setup, which I really love and I'd be loath to get rid of, but for now we're doing an okay job. If this experiment works, and I'm going to go further with X-Plane, by the way, I won't stick with the default Cessna 172. This is just for experimental purposes. I've chosen this aircraft because there's an air manager panel. It's a payware panel, which I was fortunate enough to have for free from Sim Innovations. But what I like about this payware panel is it not only supports the default X-Plane Cessna 172, it supports the Airfoil Labs Cessna 172 and indeed the Reality expansion pack for the default Cessna 172. So we've got 3 different options of Cessna 172s that we can fly immediately out of the box without doing any customization. I think I'll go for the Airfoil Labs 172 if that's the aircraft I'm going to choose. But for now we're stuck with the default. I will edit this panel. This panel, it's a little bit too small for the monitor I'm running on. This is not a full 1080p monitor. This is a 19-inch. I can't remember. I think it's 1440 by 900. So the instruments are a little bit indistinct and fuzzy. But I don't really need the switches along the bottom. The trim indicators can move. The radio stack can go. Because I've got real radios, I can probably get those to work. I'm just going to trim myself forward a bit because we're actually not far off. Our destination altitude is 6,500 feet. We're at five and a bit now, so we can continue to climb but a bit slower. We need to be lean in the mixture as well because we're so high. I'm just leaning for peak revs and then going a little bit rich of that. Don't know what the correct procedure is in a Cessna 172. So Courchevel should be directly ahead of us, and it's 16 miles away according to the GPS. We've got a pretty good view if I just dip the nose and have a look. You know, this scenery, this is default scenery. Apart from the mesh and the roads, it's looking pretty good. I do quite like the default textures in X-Plane 11. By and large, they seem to be pretty good. Certainly in comparison to Prepared or FSX. So not much else to do in the Cessna 172 in terms of managing. I mean, I'm not obviously doing anything with the radios, not doing anything complicated with the GPS. We've got the X-Plane default GNS 530 here. I've got it on my external panel. It is plumbed in, so I can do most of what I need to do from my hardware switches. I haven't put too much effort into this. I don't have a DI tweaker, so I can't synchronize that with the compass, but actually we're looking pretty synchronized at the moment. Maybe that doesn't even drift by default in X-Plane. So we can level off now. We're well high. We're approaching 7,000 feet, which is going to be, well, we'll continue to go up a little bit because we're about 500 feet above target, above the target airstrip's altitude. So we'll settle on about 1,500 feet above. So that'll be about 8,000. What I quite like is this. I'm using the virtual cockpit here. You can see I've we've got the top of the panel peeking over there. It's not aesthetically completely great. We can tweak that height. That would be a better position, but the sideways view out of the doors is not great. And this is a balance, because the other thing I've done is I've put that, in terms of fore and aft, I've put the, you may not see this in the video, the door pillar on the join between my screens. Just aesthetically that's a little bit better. So we've got a reasonable compromise in terms of the view. Now I'm not familiar with this valley at all really, so I'm not familiar with any of the landmarks, can't tell other than by looking at the GPS and broadly speaking the terrain. I'm going in roughly the right direction. Just coming back to this, we do have this virtual cockpit extending out to the right, and so I get a good sense of the right hand seat and the right hand, I suppose, superstructure of the cockpit. That looks pretty good actually. Doesn't interrupt the view too much, as it does in the Twin Otter if I use the virtual cockpit in the Twin Otter. And I think that, it kind of adds a little bit of realism in terms of it almost blends into my hardware panel, if you don't look too closely. That is. So Courchevel, what can we say about that? It's a very well known airport. It's a sort of Lukla of Europe, if you like. It's one of the, according to Wikipedia, it's some list of most dangerous airports in the world. It came about 7th on that list. 6,500 feet high. It's a well-known ski resort, of course, and interestingly enough, the airfield itself looks pretty much like a ski jump. It's got a very steep contour to it. We're at 8,000 feet now, so I'm going to just come back a bit on everything, level out. So the strip isn't too long. It's something like 1,700 feet long, which is okay for a Cessna 172, I guess. We have the advantage, well, it's a hit, it's swings and roundabouts. We have the advantage of, we'll be landing uphill, and it's an 18% gradient, which I think is about a 1 in 6, or it's actually 10-degree slope. Now that means that we're going to scrub off speed very quickly after we touch down. The downside of that is, if the winds are not in our favour, we either land with a tailwind or we don't land at all. There's another strip just ahead right there. I think that's called Meridel. I've had a little look at that strip. It's not a great, I mean it is modelled in X-Plane. I do like the setting there, but it's not a very interesting strip. It does have another fairly steep jog in it as well. So Courchevel is right about here. That's probably the flat spot there actually. If we see that lake, there's a golf course here. Oh no, maybe yeah, I think this is the golf course in the foreground. No, this is the strip actually that I'm pointing at now. The golf course is here with another little lake. So there's only one credible landing direction for this airport, and if the winds weren't in our favour, I mean, we can land with a tailwind, I guess, because we do have the benefit of that uphill gradient to slow us down. But that doesn't really mean our ground speed is going to be any lower when we touch down, so it's still a little bit hazardous. terms of an approach. The other thing we have to worry about is there's no go-around option. As you'll see when we're on final approach, you know, there really is no credible go-around. If you attempt that, you're probably just going to hit the mountain. Just trying to get sight of the strip so you can see it before we... So it's right there. Lost it now. I suppose I should overfly first so we can get a look at it. Let's go and fly over the strip. I kind of lost sight of this flipping strip when we were talking there, and now I'm getting confused. So back to the plot, no go around. That must be one of the ski resorts, that little town there. This is probably the Orbic scenery we're into now. Some of this town modelling. So that's the strip just off the right wing now. If I turn in, we kind of fly directly to it, but this is not our landing approach. So there it is. So landmarks, golf course just to the right, there's a lake just to the right, there's a lake up there on the hill. You can see if we were to try and do a go around, you've got a very steep mountain right ahead. Not recommended. Let me see if we can get a bit of a steep turn going on here so you can just get a bit of a better view. There's the strip briefly. Okay. I'm not doing a very good job of anything here. Certainly not of showing off the strip. Alright, so orientation 0523. So we'll go back out into the valley, come round, and we'll shoot a landing. We turn on to 05, which is a notional downwind. And then, constrained by terrain, we need to be turning onto our notional crosswind now, which is going to be 1-4. And as we do that, we're going to try and keep some rudder control. We're going to slow down. 1-4 coming up about now. We're going to take the power to idle, temporarily trim it back a bit. I'm going to go for flaps 20, trim for that quite assertively in a 172, looking for about 65 or 70. So there's the strip right there, not doing too bad. We've got our speed 65. We don't have a prop to manage in the 172, of course. I'm leaving the mixture leaned. Technically I think we're supposed to go full rich, but no one's going to mind. So we're a bit high, but we probably want to come in steep. So watch out for that mountain there. We could start to turn in gradually. Turn in. I may go to flaps 30. Okay. Speed's a little bit low, 60 this far out. Looks kind of flat from here. Everything looks kind of flat, but it's deceptive. Now when we touch down, that runway's got a, as I say, well, there's a kind of dip in the bottom and then there's a very steep uphill. So we're going to be flying uphill, which means we have to be very cautious in the flare, because our attitude is deceptive, let's say. Could stall inadvertently if we're flying purely visually. .65, we're doing okay. Maybe a little bit of a crosswind from the right there, because I'm having to crab slightly. Speed's dropped dangerously low there. We're going to flare now, keeping a bit of power on. Going to touch down. Could have done with touching down a little bit earlier. Make more use of that hill. I'm going to brake over the top here. So there we go, Courchevel. It's actually a nicely modelled airport. Oh, we've got some nice animated flags there. So thank you Orbix, nice little freebie. We'll, what I might do is try and get some of the high res mesh and drop that in, see if this looks better. Yep, there you go. Ongoing experiments with the Cessna 172. We'll be back.